Yep, I'm ready. Who's the artist that says "Count Me In"? Is that Sheryl Crow?
There's a lot of them. The modern day equivalent now is "Turn Me Up" in the headphones.
Ooh. Okay, let me take a breath. I don't feel like I've slept in 3 days. Okay. Ready?
Yeah. Hit it.
Hey, everybody. Tom Telford and Preston Niederhauser. This is the BrainStoke podcast, and we're about to give you your daily dose. Today, Preston, episode number 1, is going to interview me. I have no idea what he's going to say or ask. Hopefully it's G-rated.
It's up to you to determine if it's actually going to be G-rated or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we actually giving our show a rating? Should we decide right now?
Well,
Technically, it's kind of gratuitous to give yourself your own rating. It's kind of like liking your own Instagram post, but I mean, you can. You usually ask other people to give you 5 stars.
Oh, no, I don't mean that. I mean, like, are we PG-13 or are we NC-17?
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely throw a rating on there.
who are we trying to appeal to? 17-year-old for the most part, but some parents are going to be listening to us.
Yeah.
I would love to get a little wild, but I just don't know if wild's the wrong word, but
And by wild, we're talking middle-aged white bread that is a level 3 on the toaster.
yeah.
So,
No doubt.
yeah.
Perfectly,
How about this?
perfectly
How
cooked
about
toast.
Yeah.
real?
And that actually goes to one of the questions I'm going to ask you later on.
Let's roll.
With regards to real.
Let's roll.
So,
Yeah.
all right, this is Preston, and I'm going to take the opportunity today to interview Tom, give everybody an opportunity to learn about what has made Tom who he is, what makes him tick. So, first of all, Tom, we probably should start with a little bit of background, who you are, where you grew up, siblings, parents, that kind of stuff. So from what I know, you grew up on a farm of some sorts, horse property. Tell us a little bit about what that was like and what maybe a key memory that you've got of dealing with horses every day.
I love this. Yes, I actually did grow a little of my DNA in the horse world. So I actually grew up in West Kaysville. I was a Davis Dart through high school. And one of the reasons that I think that starting a podcast is appealing to me is because when I think about my childhood and where I was raised and my journey, it very much is grounded in a mental health story. And so, this is me, this is us, and why we're doing this. So Davis Dart, by saying that I'm a Davis Dart means that I was in school. In reality, I was in the parking lot as much as I was inside the school. And I say that, joking, but in truth, and in my story will kind of reveal itself over time. But I was a horrible student growing up and struggled in school, learning and reading disability. And for sure, if I was back in school today as a elementary student, junior high, high school, I for sure would have had teachers raise their hand and say, Tommy, you're going to need to get some help with your ability to concentrate and focus. And at some point, I'll tell a few stories about my incredible mentor teachers that I did have. There were some amazing women in my, growing up years who were school related, and partially of why I'm even here today. And so maybe I'll tell some of those stories at some point, along the way. But in terms of growing up, again, I was raised in West Kaysville, and my parents love horses. They were both raised around horses in the Taylorsville, Salt Lake area, Murray area. And so, having a little bit of land and a little bit of space was part of how I grew up. We had over an acre of grass. We had over an acre of garden. And I was taught from a super young age to work hard. That's just what you did. In my family, you woke up with the sun and you went to bed with it. And that's just, it's how I was raised and it's in my DNA. As a kid, when I was growing up, I loved sports. And, those of you who are listening in and you struggled in school, you know what I mean, that physical activity is that's where you find peace. Moving your body is the only way for you to cue into how your mind works. And so I was constantly on the go. I rode BMX bikes, raced BMX bikes. I was, played football, baseball, soccer, ski raced. I was a ski racer, into my early teens, and lots of crashes and accidents, were part of my journey as well, which, we'll talk more about that in, when kids have major injuries and their sports or physical persona can no longer happen in their lives. That's incredibly depressing. And so at a very young age, from a ski racing accident that stopped my ski racing journey, that became a huge factor in my own mental health journey. So I was active constantly. And, I was the youngest of 5 children, and my parents are incredible people, very kind, very much involved in our community and in our faith and church, and just awesome people. And, my growing up years were a positive one. And when I, consider, the rest of the world and how I was raised, I feel incredibly fortunate. And, I had some just awesome experiences. And, you could say that I was the spoiled baby of 5 kids. For sure, my siblings would say that I was spoiled. What I would say is that I never took no for an answer, even as a kid. So, it's not as if my parents just gave me everything that I wanted. I went to them often with things that I wanted. And because of who they are, they wouldn't tell me no, but they would tell me how. And so very early on in my life, I learned that if it was to be, it was up to me. And I was fine crushing myself doing the work that it would take to get what I wanted. And so even to this day, I don't really like hearing people tell me no, which is why I've been self-employed for 20 plus years. A funny story I'll tell sometime about, getting engaged and my in-laws asking me to take a personality profile because I think they were concerned as well that Tommy doesn't play nice with bosses. So anyway,
Okay, so we know your dad. From what I remember, your dad was a salesman. So he worked horses, but he was on the road. He took you on the road a little bit as a kid.
Yep.
And your mom was the epitome of a homemaker and meals around the table, and that was expected, right?
Yep. Yeah, for sure. My parents are entrepreneurs. Their mindset was always, it's the two of us and we'll take on the world. And that's just how they approach life. They were just going to work themselves, into the ground every day on behalf of their family. And so, yes, my dad, was a sales guy. They owned several businesses, all while I was growing up. And they definitely lived by the mantra of, work hard and play hard, and they kind of struck that balance in life. And so I don't necessarily know that I would say I followed in their footsteps, but there definitely was something about, the mindset of betting on yourself. And I've always been that way as an entrepreneur. Just, hey, if I'm just going to bet on myself, and I'm just going to, do all that I can to kind of carve out the type of life that I wanted. And that's, although, bless my wife, I think that that's challenging as a young entrepreneur's spouse, and as a young parent. Those were tough years, but that has served me well. And I think that my parents were part of that. They kind of showed me that that was something that was doable and achievable, and that I should never be scared of risk.
Awesome. We're going to fast forward a little bit, but we're not going to skip over things. Over the course of the podcast, we'll have plenty of opportunities to talk about family and kids and those kind of things. I think you've been married 23 years. Is that right?
Or 24.
24.
Next month.
And you have 3 kids, Jackson, Aspen, and James.
Yep.
Right. We'll chat about them in a minute, but I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, you've always been an entrepreneur. I know you've built and sold a handful of businesses over the years. And during all of that time, Liza ran the house and you were on the road. And now, that you've sold some businesses and Liza's gone back to work and you're now almost switched roles in a way, what have you grown to appreciate about what Liza did for those first 20 plus years running your house?
Wow. I think we could go, we could double click after double click on this one. So yeah, for 20 plus years, I was in institutional finance. I built a couple businesses, and in 2015, some partners and I sold our company to a large publicly traded Fortune 500 company. And at the time, in my head, I had been on this travel treadmill for a number of years, and I was stoked to just get off the treadmill and take a breath and ski and ride bikes and just kind of enjoy the fruits of that labor. And so I was, it was, to be frank, it was a dream come true. I mean, ultimately, that all that I had been, putting effort in and the risk and all of the sacrifice of family kind of came down to this moment in 2018. And it was fantastic. We feel incredibly fortunate. Well, my dream, what I wanted to do, wasn't necessarily what my spouse's dream and life goal was. Although she was happy for our family to be in the situation we were, she had her own goals and visions that having the flexibility, came into play. And so, by the way, my wife is Liza, and she is a licensed marriage and family therapist. And that was her dream, to go back to school, get a master's in marriage and family therapy, and to become a licensed therapist. And so today she practices, a few days a week. And what happened was that as she kind of pursued this new dream and goals that she had, it was a situation where I had a lot of time and flexibility now. And so our family took on this switch of roles, in that I was now running the household, as you said. And that was incredibly challenging for me the first 6 months, maybe even 9 months. It wasn't that the duties were challenging. It was trying to shift my mindset of every day I wake up and I grind all day, and I do it to build a company that was going to allow my family to survive. And now I was waking up and my purpose was entirely different. And the speed of which I was going about doing those home responsibilities, I was sprinting through doing laundry and cleaning and doing those things, because as soon as those chores were over, I could be on my bike or on my skis. And to be honest, it was freaking awesome. It was incredibly cool to just know, if I get these things done, I can go play. And what's funny about that is that wasn't my perception for years of what Liza was doing, raising a family. She was getting all the chores done and then going to, you know, spend time in each of the schools of our children, volunteering, you know, being involved in the community. She was serving. And so, you know, that was very different in terms of how I approached it. I was like, well, if I get the laundry done, then I can go ski 7 hours before, you know, my 12-year-old gets home from school. And so it very much was a different way in approaching, you know, how we spent that time. But I would say it took us 9 to 12 months to recalibrate our lives. But when we finally got the recalibration right, it really was all about this mutual appreciation for each other and the roles and responsibilities that each of us had carried for many years. You know, it's hard to quantify how hard it was for her to be a stay-at-home mother with 3 children, and I was gone all the time. You know, I was traveling over 100 business nights a year, and there was no set schedule. It just was when I need to go, I go. And so to be honest, I had a blind spot of really what it took for many, many years. I appreciated what she was doing, but not until the roles were reversed and I was home and taking care of, you know, what was going on, which, by the way, was at a significantly smaller level. I mean, all of our kids can feed themselves, right? They're teenagers or adults now. And so my stay-at-home house spouse responsibilities were not even close to what hers were. So, but on the flip side, you know, and if Liza were being interviewed, she hopefully, maybe she would say this. She's said this to me, you know, in, you know, private, but she has appreciated the role of the provider and how exhausting that is. And as she meets with couples and families, and as she meets with whether they're single moms or single fathers, she now recognizes the incredible emotional toll that it takes to provide for a family financially. So a quick shout out, you know, if you're a single mom or a single dad, we love you. You know, at some point we'll talk more about that, but the single parents who are listening in, we feel you, and we know the stress that, you know, you take on, and hopefully at some point we'll talk more and more about that.
Thank you. You have the unique opportunity now to actually be a business partner with your wife.
Yeah.
Contract wise. So you've had the opportunity to now watch her in her realm, right? What have you grown to appreciate about how she operates as a business person and as a professional in her role now?
Yeah, this is kind of an interesting thing. So Preston is alluding to, you know, working together. And so I mentioned that Liza is a marriage and family therapist, but the reason that we are working together is because about a year and a half ago, when she finished becoming a licensed marriage and family therapist, she finished with a company that is called Aspire Counseling Network. And so she was employed by Aspire Counseling Network when she finished all of the required hours for her to become a licensed professional. And at the time that she finished, she had a great working relationship with the owners of Aspire Counseling Network, who were John and Shelley Howard and Carson and Marlene Kinney. And these awesome people wanted to meet with us. And they wanted to meet together because, frankly, Liza was doing a great job as a therapist and she was in high demand. And they didn't want her to leave. And they kind of knew she could kind of go out on her own and do her own thing. And they knew my background as a business owner, entrepreneur, and, you know, now running an investment holding company, which is really, you know, our own investment. And so we met. And the goal was for Aspire Counseling Network to get an idea if Liza and I would be interested in owning some commercial real estate where Aspire Counseling Network could have their business located in that office space. And so the conversation started about investing in commercial real estate together, and it quickly moved along to Liza and I buying a third of Aspire Counseling Network. And over the course of 6 months doing some due diligence, that actually occurred. And so Liza and I now own a third of Aspire Counseling Network. And what's happened is that in this last year, we started a spin-off sister company called Aspire Medical. So Aspire Counseling Network employs over 100 mental health clinicians, therapists, and Aspire Medical does medication management for the mental health space. And so for clients of Aspire Counseling Network who are getting therapy, they also can get their medication management, if needed, through Aspire Medical. And so there are two companies that are now operating within the Aspire companies. And those companies, back to your original question, are what Liza and I work on, and inside of together. And so where she very much is doing therapy on a daily basis, she's also helping running these businesses along with these other owners of Aspire who are fantastic people. But it's demanding. It's incredibly demanding. And so, to answer your question, in a very long way, in a roundabout way, hopefully that gives people some context. But Liza is very much a people's person. She has a big heart. It's important to her how people are communicated with. Our kids would, all say, on her gravestone, it probably will say something like, people won't care about anything other than the way you treated them. And that's just who she is. And so it works out incredibly well being in business together because my kind of type A, fast-paced brain, give me 3 bullet points or I'm not going to talk to you mentality, it's offset by the way that she approaches a much more heartfelt, connect with people, mindset. And so it's been really good. It's actually pretty cool to sit in board meetings with a super attractive woman and it's fully in bounds. Like I can actually sit there and smile at her and it's not, super awkward or, weird. And I'm, it's cool. And so I enjoy that of having her in the meetings, obviously being married, but there's this other component that she brings that, because of her big heart and because of her entering this space, 20 years, later than most people kind of begin a career, she would be much more understated than her capability and her talent really is. And so, I'm in these meetings going, Liza, speak up, or what's your opinion, or all these things. And she has so much inside her, one, because moms could run the world just based on their experience, being a mom. And two, she's just incredibly intuitive and reads people, super well. And so, yes, she's my wife and super cute and I love her. But from a business perspective, her opinion as a woman and as a mother, those are the kinds of nuggets of wisdom that businesses need everywhere. So it's cool to be involved with her, but it's also incredibly valuable for the business to have someone like her sitting in those decision-making meetings and sharing her opinion.
Yeah, I appreciate what you said about Liza. I've known Liza now, I don't know if it's been 10 years or so, or maybe a little bit longer, but I know she's just someone you want to be around. And I think a lot of people gravitate towards her happiness and her positivity, and she's always engaging and wanting to visit and talk with everybody in the room. And I think that's something that a lot of people know is genuine and really appreciate. But I know we'll have many more opportunities to hear a lot of fun stories about Liza. So thanks for sharing a little bit about that. Okay, let's back up a little bit. So you attended Weber State University. You got a degree in sales, technical sales, I think is the official degree. And then recently you went back to school and you got a master's degree from Gonzaga University. What was that degree in? And tell me a little bit about how that has changed the way you think about life and decisions, because I know it's impacted. I think that in a good way for you.
It has been. So yes, I am a former grad of the Weber State Professional Sales Program. When I was going through it, it was called technical sales. And so it is a 4-year degree, bachelor's. And I just loved that program because, when I was going through it at the time, it was very much a program that was based on less of what you could regurgitate from books and much more this dynamic program that was teaching you how to use your personality and charisma and capability to communicate with people in a productive way and valuable for businesses. And so, another time we can, talk more about this story, but I was going to school online and in the mornings as a newlywed. And that very day I was using the things that I was learning in class to make money. And, that may sound strange, talking on a podcast like this, where we're talking about mental health, but I'm hoping and praying that this podcast attracts lots of high school kids and kids who are in college, and they're looking for ideas and inspiration of how to get started. Because as I go back to really the roots of my mental health as an adult, it was during the time frame that I was at Weber State in the professional sales program. So yes, I went through that program. I loved it. It gave me a foundation for, a career in sales, a career in business as an entrepreneur. A lot of that, learning those couple years in those classes and program were just so foundational for what my career has been about. So after school, I was working in the financial services industry, and I spent 20 years building and selling companies, and they were all within the financial sector. And when we finally sold that company and kind of finished the sale of it, it was an awesome time. Like I said, like I was skiing a ton and riding my bike, and I had a lot of flexibility, but there was something, if I'm totally honest, inside me that was missing. And, that sounds strange. Like you sell a company, you're in a good financial position, your family now, has you in town. I felt for the first time that I was present in my own life and I could enjoy my life and I wasn't as stressed. But if I'm honest, there was a gap inside me, and the gap took me some time to try to uncover and discover. And what I started to recognize is that I had a hunger inside of me to really scratch the itch of my intellect, which sounds strange right now, but I really wanted to utilize my brain in a different way than I had the prior 20 years. As I said before, I was super self-conscious about my ability to learn. I struggled in school. I finally got through it. I, kicked off a career and kind of went at it. But as time went along, something started to grow inside of me, and I had a desire to rely less on my charisma and hustle and more rely on my capability to reason and understand and use knowledge for survival and thrival as opposed to these other attributes. And so it was probably about a year after we had sold the company that I really started looking into going back to school and getting a master's. And I started to look at programs. I won't mention names, but I was accepted to most MBA programs in the state of Utah. And I ended up choosing one of those programs. And the night before the program kicked off, I logged into my student profile and I started reading very specific parts of the curriculum of the MBA program. And I just had this horrible feeling inside of me. Like, why would I do this? I just spent 20 years in business, had all these great experiences running and building companies, and it just felt wrong to me. And so I actually called the next morning and told them that I was not going to accept my place in the executive MBA program. And I just let it sit for a while. And, after about 6 months, something started inside of me again, that had this desire to really work and build my intellect, for this second phase of my life. And as dumb as this sounds, I literally sat down one day at my laptop and I was thinking, if I'm going to go back to school, if I am going to spend this money and time and do this again, if I am going to spend all-nighters writing papers, when I'm not financially necessarily reliant on my master's degree, what do I want to study? And it hit me so clearly that if I'm going to go back, I want to do two things. One, I want to learn how to be a better communicator. And two, I want to become a better leader. And that really stems from the last 20 years of running companies. Some people may think it's marketing or this brilliant idea or, are you a better competitor? And in my experience, running the companies that I was involved in and, the way that we approach the business, for me, running a successful company is all about communication and leadership. And I just wanted to be better in those two things. And so the long answer to your question is I Googled Masters, Communication, Leadership, and the first thing that popped up was Gonzaga University, Masters in Organizational Leadership. And I hit the link, I read, and every word that I read in that first webpage that popped up was exactly what, I was hungering for inside. And so, I told Liza that afternoon, hey, I found it. It's game on. This is what I'm doing. I enrolled, and obviously, COVID, bounces into our lives. And so the majority of the program was done online, but overall, jokingly, I would say I'm now an LDS Catholic because Gonzaga is amazing and it's a Jesuit university, which, for those of you that don't know what Jesuit learning is, it is educating the whole person. And so I just ate it up. It was this time of life with the desire, with time, and I learned so much. And it has just become, another part of my journey. And my takeaways are endless. I could go on and on about it a long time, but there's a couple quotes, I'll maybe just share this one that, when it's all said and done, that the most successful that a human can be in this life is directly correlated to knowledge. And that's so weird for me to say because when I was a kid, I literally could not think. I literally could not learn, which sounds strange to those I'm sure listening. But when you have a learning disability or you have, a reading disability, people all around you in classrooms are sitting there having a learning experience and you're lost. So learning is going on and you're literally lost. And so for me now to fast forward into my mid 40s and to have this hunger to go back to school and get a master's, that's just, it was so foreign to me in terms of how I began my life, but it has now just become second nature. You know, those of you that are listening, you can't see my desk or where we're, meeting right now, but we are surrounded by books. I have just totally embraced learning, and have found that it is directly correlated to how happy I am. It's directly correlated to my ability to be successful in life. It's become a mindset and a persona. Whereas when I was growing up, it was all about athletics and being active, and a lot of my adult life. That's still part of me for sure. But knowledge and learning is at least the other 50% of my DNA.
Sweet. That's great info. Well, I spend plenty of time on the road, just like you did in your career. When you had the opportunity to decompress, I used to always call it go get some mountain therapy, whatever that is, however you want to define that. I know you'd spend a lot of time on the bike. I think you've done a couple Ironmans, if I recall. You've done the Park City Point to Point. What are some other key things that maybe you've done that have been big goals in terms of just fat dad physical fitness, right? We always joke about being fat dads, but we love to ride our bikes. We love to get outside. We love to do those kinds of things. So what are some of those key sporting events that you participated in?
Yeah, so Preston and I are, the president and vice president of Fat Dad Racing. So if you want to join the team, it's super easy. You eat a lot and you pour yourself into spandex.
I stuff myself.
So, I mean, like I said before, physical activity is it's directly correlated to to who I am. I don't know why. I thought about this the other day. As early as I can remember, I've always wanted people to think of me and who I am with my physical capability. Not like amazing biceps and abs. I just mean that, I've always wanted people to believe, that I was an athlete. And I don't know why. Maybe it's like, Bo Jackson or my early years of seeing these incredible ski racers. I just always had, an attraction to athletes. And so, yeah, it's super important to me. And to be frank, it is directly correlated to my mental health. If I don't do something physically every day, I mean, it's not that obsessive, but, to be very honest and transparent, if I go more than 2 days without physical activity, I'm going to have a drop in my mental health. I just am. And so what I realized as a young entrepreneur is that my coping capability with stress was horrible. I suck at stress. I'm like a D-. I'm on the junior varsity stress team. Like some people do that really well. I don't. And so I just realized, in my early 20s that for me to be able to, maintain physical health, which was a springboard to mental health and my spirituality, I had to stay physically active. I love food, and I would be a horrible drinker and drug addict because I don't cope well. And so if I don't use positive coping in my life, then easily I can get off track with negative coping. And so, yes, because of all my ski racing accidents at 21 years old, because I was a newlywed, I went to see my knee doctor and he said, Tom, you got to stop skiing like you do. You act like you're in a Juicy Fruit commercial.
You still do, by the way.
I'm amazing, and I still choose.
Your jump turns are spectacular.
Yeah, I chew juicy fruit still. For those of you that don't know, Google it. So I love to stay active, and what that means is in the summer months, ride mountain bikes. I love to trail run because of a back surgery, and other injuries. I've had to kind of pump the brakes on running, but I love to run. I love to ride bikes, both mountain, road, gravel. I don't discriminate against my wheel types. I'm in to all of it. So I've done a number of triathlons, some half Ironman, full Ironman, some bike races, point to point, which is 75-mile, 10,000 feet of climbing mountain bike race in Park City. It's one of my favorite, days of the year. I've done that. I think I've done it 5 times or 6 times. I'm not sure the number that I've done, but, and I just love being active and out there with friends, and, it's just something that I truly enjoy. I feel my best, not, as a husband and as a father, but personally, when I get some me time, I'm going out to spend time outside doing something active, and even better if it's on a mountain, which we'll talk about another day. But growing up as a ski racer and skiing at Snow Basin, I just always dreamt of living at the base or on that mountain. And so living in Mountain Green is a dream come true.
I agree 100%. Can you remember the first time you discovered what people call the runner's high, whether that was on a bike or on a trail run? Do you remember what that is? And maybe can you describe that a little bit?
Yeah. So, wow, that actually is a really good question, because this morning I rode my bike on the trainer, and then I got on the treadmill. I did a bike run workout. And when I was running, I was thinking to myself, when was the first time, I experienced this high? And I'm pretty sure that it was in high school. I played football and I played baseball, and one of my close friends, his name's Adam Sheffield. He actually, funny enough, when we were in high school together, the end life goal was to someday own Snow Basin, right?
It's reasonable.
Reasonable. I mean, Earl Holding was shooting for it, so we thought we're cool.
Why not us?
Yeah, and so Adam and I had a dream to own Snow Basin. Well, we don't own Snow Basin, but he lives in Mountain Green, and so do I, and so that this is pretty dang close. Adam was one of my heroes, and so Adam was this incredible football player, incredible athlete. We would go after school. We would lift at Ogden Athletic Club, which is weird if you go to Davis High, but it's a different crop of
It's a new scene.
friends and and dating pool. And so we would end up at Ogden Athletic Club a couple days a week. And it was during that time frame that I really started to embrace this idea of running and lifting weights and the high that came from that activity. And obviously at that age, you can eat like 2 large pizzas and a liter of Mountain Dew, and if you lift weights, you're still like super buff and cut. And so, I was feeling good and interacting with, my buddy who I respected a lot. And then you start seeing results, and it creates this really positive cycle of do the hard work, see the results, feel good, do the hard work, feel good, see that I cut my teeth on that cycle as a teen, for sure.
Okay, let's do something. Do some rapid fire questions for a minute. Okay. And I guess you can elaborate a little bit, but Let's start with, would you rather go uphill or downhill?
Uphill.
Why?
I don't know what it is again, but maybe I'm going to blame my parents. Maybe I'm going to blame, I don't know, but actually your question prior about the runner's high, I'm maybe going to go back to that and answer this question too. When I was working, as a kid outside in my yard, on our land, whatever you want to say, I got to the point where my parents didn't have to ask me to go work in the yard for 6 hours or whatever on a Saturday. I started to correlate being out in the hot sun and sweating and doing hard work. There was something deeply fulfilling and that felt good to me. There was something about working hard and feeling tired and then looking at the lawn, the straight lines, or, rotor tilling the garden and, the dirt was like manicured well. So there was a pride about the outcome of doing hard things and seeing it. And so, that felt good to me. Being tired at the end of my work was fulfilling to me. So when I think about going uphill or downhill, trust me, I love the feeling of the wind blowing through my not long hair. It's awesome to go downhill, but it's only awesome to me if I rode to the top to then go down, if that makes sense. And so I love the fulfillment of the work, and I know that sounds sick to a lot of people, but I truly do like going uphill.
Okay, so that leads into this next question. Would you rather be on a resort, a Powder Day resort, or would you rather go ski touring?
Ski touring.
Okay, I figured.
Backcountry.
Yeah. If you were to go to In-N-Out Burger, what would be your order?
Oh boy, it depends on the activity of the day. Oh, I'm a huge burger fan. I'm not going to put In-N-Out, at the top of my list, but if I'm going to In-N-Out, I pretty much have said, screw it. This isn't about the skinny version. This is all about just diving in, face down in a burger. And so I'm going to double it up. I'm going to cheese it up, probably going to hit a shake at the same time, dunk some fries. Yeah. If I'm at In-N-Out, I'm going all in.
I figured you would.
Yeah.
Monster or Red Bull?
Monster.
What flavor?
I'm really into peach and the ruby red grapefruit right now.
I might have seen you double fisting 2 days ago. Is that possible?
Yeah. So
I think you had one of each.
This is called BrainStoke. And so listen, there are days when you're going to need some substance, some help, right? A little caffeine mentor. So yeah, I do like Monster. I actually don't drink Monster for necessarily the caffeine. I actually do like the flavor of, a good Monster. So no double fisting. I actually do believe in this concept of moderation. And so I try to hit one a day.
That works.
One a day.
Okay, speaking of, if you were to hit the pantry right now, what would you be looking for?
Yeah, when I'm, quote, on plan, close quote, I am going for these like quinoa rice flour chips that, I used to buy like 20 bags at a time from Costco, and they were a staple in my diet. But now due to COVID, DTC, due to COVID, and inflation, they're now like $30 a bag. So when I'm going to the pantry, I can only have like 5 chips at a time. And then I'm such a sucker for anything that is a nut covered in chocolate. So, yeah.
Okay. You're notorious on group text threads.
Oh boy.
For sending really outrageous video clips of yourself. They're some type of selfie video that's you're trying to inspire the group. Where do these concepts come from?
Yeah, I think that it's probably a combination of things. I'm going to again blame being the baby of the family. So when you're the baby of the family, you pretty much believe that everybody else is thinking about you and whatever you're doing all the time. And so it's maybe a little bit of that of, the baby of the family syndrome and, thinking you're funny and, trying to just capture everyone's attention. So for sure, there's something in that. The other part is I don't know how to answer this other than maybe a little more expanded, version. But, as a husband, as a father, as a provider, I think that I'm very conscious daily of how hard it is to, one, be a provider, and two, if you're working to get ahead in this life as a provider, it's freaking hard. Making money in this life is incredibly challenging. And if you're doing that for not just yourself, but for a family, it's hard. And so Preston's referring to these video clips that I'll send to friends, who are, what we have in common is cycling or other things. And I just have these moments in my brain where I'm thinking, I have friends who are out grinding, trying to provide for their families. And I just want them to know I'm thinking about them, that I care about them. And if I can just make them smile or chuckle a little bit, that feels good to me. And so it's really just trying to love and lift other people that I care about.
We love them. So we hope they continue. And I love that it's cycling season's around the corner. So we anticipate more of you standing in bibs with a necklace and a headband on and, doing your deal.
We're actually going to do a day in the studio where we're all going to be shirtless and we're just going to have on what I call chain ring bling, which is like old chain rings from bikes that are put on these sweet, like gold chains. And that's all we'll be in.
The Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
The Kirk Cousins, but BrainStoke style. I like it. It's real good.
Exactly. Yep. Have fun, right? I mean, if life were just heavy all day, every day, and we were just sending each other the bad things that are going on in our day, we're just not going to get through it. Well, again, like, how can you stoke the brain with those that are around you that you care about in a positive way? And so that's what these little me being lame video clips are about.
Well, we love them. Okay, I got a couple more questions for you. You've been known to always have a real talk with your kids. And I appreciate it. I love it. But why do you get so real with your kids where it feels like maybe our society might skirt the issues, whatever the issues might be?
Yeah. So this is one of those questions that we could spend 2 hours on. But when I was growing up as a kid, I felt like my relationship to adults, my parents, to coaches, to people in school, people at church, whatever. I always felt like my relationship to them, because of my personality type, was always conflicting. There was conflict within me because of not wanting to be talked down to. I didn't want to be placated. And if it makes sense, I didn't like looking at adult faces, watching them talk to each other, and doing as much as they possibly could to try to keep truth or what was really going on in life away from me as a kid. And so, and maybe this again, I'm going to go back to my ability to learn, maybe ADHD, component of who I am. When you can't learn in school, when you can't really hear someone talk to you and one, comprehend what they're saying, and two, retain it and use it in your life. If that's physically incapable for you, then how do you survive? And the answer is you survive on whatever you have. And so what I had as a kid was the ability to read people. I would just watch what's going on. What did they say, but more so how they said it and how they treated me and how they interacted with me. And so, to be frank, I didn't like it. I didn't like how that made me feel to not be communicated with clearly and honestly and truthfully. And trust me, I'm not blaming any one person, but and I think that most adults do that thinking that they're trying to protect kids, right? Like, well, they're too young and they can't handle it, or they're too young and I don't want them to know. And I just struggle with that. Still as an adult, I don't like that feeling. And so the simplest way to say it is this: if the roles were reversed, how would I want to be talked to? And so when I think about my children, and if I were in their shoes, I would want my dad, I would want my parents to speak to me and treat me as if I would want to be treated. And again, what I said before a couple minutes ago, if you believe that knowledge is king in this life, if you truly believe that what you know is going to open up every locked door for you in this life and the opportunities for you to succeed at your highest level, then you also have to believe that your kids need to have the same thing. And so my philosophy is that my kids should know truth. So these frank talks that Preston is talking about, I've been known to diagram some very graphic things for my kids. I have this giant Post-it note. It's like 3 feet tall and 3 feet wide.
It's worth noting it's in the family room typically, so it's there for anyone to see.
Yeah,
which is great.
Yeah, so I just don't believe that there's any topic in my household that is off limits. So whether that is relationships, whether that is alcohol, drugs, this is going to probably turn off a lot of people who tune in for the first time. But there was actually a night where my wife and I sat down, all of our kids, and we taught them all the swear words and we practiced saying them. And
it's true. True story.
The purpose was to take the power out of the word. The reason that kids and adults use swear words is because they're trying to get effect. They're trying to get a rise. They're trying to say something about it. And when I was a kid and some adult would say, "Tommy, don't say that," or "That's a bad word," that's all I needed to know. Like, like that worked. And so there's power in that word. So our philosophy is, as parents was, let's just take the power out of the word, right? Let's just demystify what is there. And so again, whether that's words or relationships or sex or drugs or alcohol or whatever, there is no topic that's off limits. I don't believe in instilling fear at any level. It only causes lying, deception, shame, all things that are directly correlated with poor mental health and a life that is a struggle, which this podcast is going to talk often about going forward, that those types of emotions that are, negative, ultimately they become a problem in people's lives. And so again, that's not necessarily saying, that was my approach to mental health for my children. But do I believe honest transparency, no topic is off limits, is directly correlated to their mental health? Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
So BrainStoke has decided to sponsor the Utah Cycling League for the 2023 season, right? And you have been involved with, as a coach with Morgan High School for the past, I think, 7 or 8 years, maybe more. What brings you the most joy about participating and being involved with the youth on the high school mountain bike team?
For those listening, you can't see us, but my heart rate just jumped 20 beats a minute. I love mountain biking. It is awesome. It's my favorite sport by far. I wish that, in Utah sports, when I was in high school, there was a mountain bike league. Now in the state of Utah, there's like 8,000 athletes who are competing. And, the NICA Utah, Federation is this incredible organization packed with super passionate people. And because of living in Mountain Green, part of Morgan County, which is Morgan High School, I was able to get involved about, the time that my oldest child, who's now 21, when he was getting into middle school, we got involved in mountain biking because I wanted to ride with him, and it was a way for us to, spend time together. And so we got involved in mountain biking, and that just slowly introduced, the Utah High School Cycling League into our lives, and it hasn't left. It is an amazing organization. And more importantly than just the biking and the organization, it has built, relationships that I now have with kids. In fact, in my office right now, there's 3 or 4 pictures of past teams that, that are on my wall. And so I have all these incredible relationships with, kids and athletes that I've gotten to know over the years. And my favorite part about being involved with them was riding bikes with them was always a blast. But there was something that happened on the bike doing hard things with them that just converted me to staying involved in the sport of high school racing. And it was this moment in time when a student athlete in their own training and racing has this aha moment where they finally connect the dots that their ability to do hard things and to embrace the suffer opened up doors in their own self-confidence and their own ability to advocate for themselves and the life they wanted to have. And so, yes, I love the sport. I love to be on bikes. I love to be out there on the mountain. It's awesome. But there's something deeper that's there going on with the high school cycling league, in that they're literally helping teenagers figure out who they are and that they have the ability to do really hard things in this life and do it with confidence. And that is freaking magic. It's like any other program that I've seen. And trust me, I love baseball and football. But and I know that other programs and sports in high school allow that to happen. But there's something very interesting about an individual sport like cycling, where the athletes train and they do the workouts together, but on game day, which is a race for cyclists, they are mostly self-coached. They have to be out on the course alone. And yes, they're racing other racers, But they have to have not only the capability to do the race, but they have to have the capability to coach themselves. In racing, we call it self-coach or positive self-talk. And so these racers are in this super, dynamic environment where they're both the racer and the coach, and they have to have the capability to do that at a high level for them to just finish the race. They're incredibly challenging, courses, and high school kids are really fast and talented. And so it's just created this an amazing environment for progression of humans in a controlled, environment that is unique.
So why BrainStoke? With that as our background, why are you doing BrainStoke?
Well,
and maybe help us understand what will BrainStoke be, or what is it?
Sure. So if I were to kind of connect all the dots of everything that is part of my story, BrainStoke is this organization that we started to answer a major question in our minds, which is, how do we make sure that every child, teen, young adult, and parent know that they matter? And I'm going to get emotional. We spend enough time growing up on our own, and then we get married, we have kids, and we see the struggle of life, through, our own experiences. And that it creates this knowledge within us that life is hard. And when there are opportunities for you to kind of crack the code of life, and secrets, or the tools in the toolkit that allow for you to get over the hard parts of life, then you want to share them, in any way, that is possible. And so, when I try to connect all of my journey together, had a rough time growing up in terms of school, figuring out, as a young adult, as an entrepreneur, my potential to do hard things and to use it to be able to provide for my own family, build companies, sell companies, spend time with my children, trying to help them grow and develop, and racing and training, with these high school kids. And then there are things that come into your life, like Preston and I, have one of our closest friends who the last couple months, his son went missing. And for a few days, there was incredible panic, in our lives as close friends of the family, and trying to figure out how we can help them, and how to bring, their son home. And at the same time that that's going on, my wife is going to work every day as a marriage and family therapist, and we own a third of 2 mental health companies. And you put that all in the smoothie of, what's going on in life and what's going on in, people that we care about's lives. All things point to, how do we help people feel like they matter? And our best way to do that we know of, is to tell the stories of ourselves, those that we care about, people that we come in contact with, in the most honest and transparent way possible, so that other people who may be asking the question of themselves, do I even matter? And if it helps, you know, if it helps one person, then this will all be worth it. So, BrainStoke is for the stories of the people who found that in their own lives, through their own struggle, their own hard times, that they matter, and that the hard of life is what is going to give you strength to know that you matter. So that's why we're starting BrainStoke. You know, the logo and the actual term BrainStoke is just that. It is a combination of both the brain and the emotion of what it feels like to have negative emotions and positive emotions, and to be able to know in confidence that you matter. And that is our goal, is to help stoke the brains of everybody who listen in so that they know that they matter.
Right on. Thanks for sharing that. So the podcast, today's our official launch, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to start to interview initially student athletes from the Utah Cycling League. Next week we'll have on Payson Norman, who was the 2022 varsity state champ. And I think he's got a pretty unique background and story to share. And then our goal throughout the season will be to interview additional student athletes, regardless of where they finished. I think that's important to make sure we talk about that. So those are some things we have to look forward to with regards to the BrainStoke podcast.
Yeah, I couldn't be more excited to really dive into the stories and to share with people in a very genuine way their own mental health journey. And oftentimes when we talk about mental health, I sit in meetings, all the time. And when we speak of mental health, it feels very medical. It feels much more like you're going to the clinic, or you're going to the hospital, or, you're going to, a professional who's going to give you ideas about your mental health. And in reality, every human has a mental health story, because life starts in the mind. Literally every behavior before it is done is first a thought. And I hope that we start talking about that more openly. We for sure will on the podcast, but if you're a parent and you're listening in, yes, we want to stoke the brains of every child and racer who listen in, or student athletes, but we hope that we provide hope to you as a parent to be able to have those tough conversations and to communicate very openly with your children about your mental health story. And it's only then, when parents are transparent and genuine and willing to be vulnerable with, your own children about your struggle and your own journey, that's when things really open up. And so, Preston asked me earlier about, being open with my kids. The times that I had the most vulnerability with my kids about all my stupid decisions and all the things that I've done, that aren't great, it was in those moments that I felt my kids' hearts and minds open to the fact that their parents are imperfect. And, that they know that we are human. And ultimately, kids are going to know that they matter when parents can show them that they are also human, right? The best way to know that you matter is to know that others around you are human. And it's such a great way for us, as a podcast that's beginning to try to engage, parents in trying to be more vulnerable with the intent that others are going to feel around you that they matter, that it's okay to not be perfect.
Well, I think we've had a good time with Tom today, learning about who he is, what shaped him, what motivates him. So look forward to many more of these podcasts together. It's going to be a good ride.
I am stoked.
He's just one half of the puzzle. We'll get back with Preston's interview next episode.
Oh boy.
So
Nice.
be ready for that.
See you next time.